Gretel and Hansel is another unneeded adaptation of the Grimm fairy tale Hansel and Gretel that, though it has some impressive cinematography and bits, it really doesn't provide much else. The film Gretel and Hansel opens with kind of a little mini intro movie kind of scene where it describes the creation of basically the witch that lives in the forest. In essence, what it is it shows a little girl who was born. She was the fairest of them all, but she had some evil in her. And then parents took her to an enchantress who supposedly sucked the evil out and let her realize her gift to see the future, or to tell people what's coming. And what it does is it didn't really take out the evil. She's actually an evil little child. So what happens is she gets basically sent off into the woods, where then the little girl is basically seen bringing other children into the woods and leading them down into kind of like a little cement tomb in the ground. And that is kind of this fairy tale, or this story that Gretel is telling Hansel. It's been told to all the kids in the area, and that's kind of what the point is. But that part then cuts over to the actual telling of the story, where Gretel is sent off to interview for a job in town to some kind of wealthy old man in the city. And what happens is she goes there, and this guy basically is just a dirty old man that keeps talking to her, and it's like, well, what all will you do? What will you do for me? Can you do this? And basically asks her if she's still a virgin, and it kind of pisses off Gretel, who's about 16 in this film, and then she runs off, who has her little brother out, Hansel, with her, and he's about 8 years old, and all he really cares about is crumb cakes and candies and sweets and stuff. So she kind of knocks him upside his head and is like, no, we're not going to go back there and deal with that old man. Let's go back to our house. They go back to their house, and what's explained is that the area is going through a famine, and their father's already died, and their mother's really just this mean, nasty person who's like, I can't care for you. You need to go off into the woods and fend for yourselves. So that's basically what happens, is they then cut and go to the woods to go off and fend for themselves. On their first night out, they make their way and end up finding a old house. Well, they go into the old house, and it appears to be fine. It used to belong to a farmer, somebody that their father once knew and had traded some produce or something with. And while they're starting to try to go to sleep, and then like a zombie-like creature attacks them, and it runs them out of the house before that zombie creature is shot through the head by a huntsman or a woodsman. And he seems to be like the nicest character in the film. What he does, he kind of talks to him, and then Gretel is kind of suspecting that he's going to want something in return from them, potentially from her, it being a girl, or something from him, because they don't have any money or anything. But he tells her, kindness is a gift into itself, and if you be kind to people, hopefully you can foster kindness in other folks. So he's really kind of the only good and decent person in this film, outside of the naive Hansel and Gretel, who's young but still trying to grow into her own right, become a woman, and go out and make her path in the world. Well, there's some pretty cool cinematography in this film. Throughout there's a lot of decent shots, like nature, things like that, like them walking through the trees and the trees blowing, along with a couple of decent little set houses that they built out in the woods, things like that, with some odd colors and stuff that they use. So it looks pretty good in a couple instances, but the plot is really lacking, and it kind of bounces along for a little while before actually becoming anything that you actually want to watch. So as they're going through the forest, Gretel has this ability to talk to things, so to speak. What she does is, they're hungry. A couple days later, she keeps seeing things that Hansel doesn't see. Basically, I think she mentions that she sees and talks to things that aren't necessarily there. So she's looking out the whole time while they're walking through the woods and seeing what appears to be possibly witches, or this little girl from the original story at the very beginning in her little pink bonnet, who's just running through the woods, causing all kind of evil and ruckus. Well, they make their way through, and then she finds some mushrooms. They eat the mushrooms. They get a little high, start tripping a little bit. And then from that, they're able to navigate a little bit further before they reach this house in the middle of the woods. It's not a house made of candy. It's just a normal little cottage. It looks real appetizing or appealing to them. So they go to the house. They look into the window, and they see a whole bunch of beautiful food on the table. So Hansel slips underneath the window, goes in there and starts stuffing his face with stuff. At that point, an old woman kind of grabs him And then Gretel starts to go make a fire, and the old woman pops out with Hansel and is like, you better not start something you can't finish, kind of alluding, possibly fires or weakness, or, starting a fire on the house will cause something bad to happen. But the old lady invites him in, gives him all the niceties and things like that, feeds him a couple times, provides him a bed to sleep in, and she's kind of a weird old woman. Like, she walks by and smells Hansel a couple times, takes a little cut of his hair and goes and stashes it. And she tells Gretel a few times, shows her a potion book, and tells her that, she has power within her. She has the ability to see things that aren't there, or see things that are hidden. And she makes like a potion for her, and she says, drink it, it'll help you become a new woman. And then from there, it kind of progresses to a little bit where Gretel's starting to see visions of things in her dreams. She doesn't know if she's actually seeing them or if it's a dream kind of world. And that's where some of the cool cinematography comes up, because Gretel's going and she walks into this room where there's a bunch of mirrors, and in the mirrors she can see a bunch of kids walking up. The kids are saying that something killed me, they killed and they ate us, and it's kind of odd, but you don't really get much explanation from it. And then a little bit later, Hansel asks the old lady, where are you getting all this food from? Then Gretel offers to go out and find provisions for her. She's like, no, don't worry about it, we got enough stuff. So they are kind of just like pissing around the house a little bit. Hansel's basically been given the job of do some chores like sharpening some saws and axes and things like that. And he runs off into the woods and tries to chop down a couple trees, while Gretel is, in essence, learning from this old lady. Like, she's teaching her about herbs and things like that, and how to produce various medicines or sleeping potions and stuff, and shows her this book. So Gretel digs through the book a little bit and tries to learn it. So she's starting to kind of realize that this lady is some kind of witch, but she doesn't know for sure, because she's enjoying being there and she's learning things. And then Hansel at that point starts to try to say, there's something bad here. I was out in the woods, I saw some little people, little kids running around, and they kind of scared me a little bit. I hear, there's this shed full of axes and stuff, and something's talking to me, telling me to go play with these. So he's like, I think we should go, Gretel. And she's like, no, you can go if you want to. So one scene that may be a dream or may not be a dream, she kind of leads him outside and says, there's the woods, if you want to go. The woodsmen are not that far down the way. You can find it based on the map that the old huntsman in the beginning gave us. And, she wakes up, and then Hansel's not in his bed. So from there, she starts to get a little bit worried, and the witch tells her, the old woman tells her that, you didn't want him to leave, you're not his mother, you don't need to take care of him, you will be fine, he'll be fine on his own, just stay here with me and learn what you need to learn about the magic you can have. So she gives Gretel some salve or whatever that she wipes on her, like puts on her forehead, puts on her hands, and she makes like a stick stand up and kind of move around a little bit. And then Gretel goes out into the woods and can cause like a tree to kind of bend down over to her. So it's showing that she does have some kind of magical ability that's present, that this old woman has helped kind of bring out or foster better. And from there, you can see kind of why Gretel wants to stay at the place while Hansel doesn't, because he's starting to feel like this lady may be fattening him up for something. I don't know. It doesn't really explain. He said it's really just kind of bouncing around. The film's about an hour and 25 minutes long before the credits roll, and the bulk of it is kind of just them hanging out at this house, going through basically some daily chores and stuff like that, before finally Hansel disappears, and that's when the film kind of speeds up a little bit, and there's maybe only about 15 to 20 minutes left at this point when that happens. And then Gretel goes into a cupboard where she, earlier in the film, saw like a little doorknob hidden behind some old rotted wood and such. So she goes in there, she tears the wood off, opens a little door, and then goes down into basically kind of like this little basement area, big cement kind of basement area, where she sees Hansel over in the corner just talking to himself. He can't really see her interact with her. She sees this gnarly looking pipe spilling out this oily black bloodish looking stuff that then like morphs into this beautiful younger woman, who then turns up this bucket on top of a table, and it's a whole bunch of like body parts, intestines, blood and stuff, that she then does some magic and it turns into all the beautiful and appetizing food that they ate earlier in the film. And at that point, she like wakes up, and again, this was probably a dream that occurred. And at that point, now her mind is set, like, we have to get out of here. I've got to save my little brother, and I've got to get away from this witch. But she doesn't really know exactly what to do. So she tries to give the witch like a sleeping potion. The witch is like, okay, you did good. That's a good added touch to it. But why are you trying to put me to sleep? and then she tells her the true story or the big reveal in the film, which it didn't really lead up to or didn't kind of give you any indication of this. But this old witch that's in the woods is actually the mother of the little girl in the beginning, and she was mad at her daughter because she was evil. So she banished her out into the woods, and then she still kept to see the little girl who told her that she can have the power that she has. All she has to do is make a sacrifice. And what that woman's sacrifice was is she had 2 or 3 additional children, so she ended up eating those children, sacrificing them in essence, or they're her poison that she has to get rid of, and use that as a way to gain her power. She tells Gretel that Hansel is her poison that she has to eat. It won't kill her, but it'll make her more powerful. It'll make her strong, reveal her true self. So she's got to eat Hansel, and that's what she's gonna do. The witch then eats some nasty, like, little candy-looking fruit thing, and then pulls out a big long string of hair. That's kind of her shtick, is she takes hairs from all of her victims and comes back and enjoys it later. Don't know for sure, but it's just kind of a nasty, odd scene. And, well, they then go down into this basement area where Gretel's got her hands kind of chained or leather strapped to the table, while this woman, the witch, now fully revealed as the witch, makes the Hansel kind of walk over to this little cage that's positioned above kind of like a little fire pit. And once he gets to the top of the ladder, he'll fall down into the fire. So he starts to do that, and then Gretel looks over and she sees the stick from before, like kind of this little magic stick, whatever it is, they don't really explain. And she rubs her forehead, and that's where some of the salve is. She reaches out her hand and does a little force maneuver where the stick stands up straight, and then she points her hand, and the stick goes flying and pins the witch by her neck up against the wall just above the fire. The fire then laps up, hits her legs, burns her all to ash. She falls into the fire. At that point, Gretel has made her sacrifice or committed the murder she needed to do to achieve her power, basically taking all that witch's power and releasing her own power. Then she commands Hansel to stop, and Hansel then backs down. And that's the end of the issues or problems in this film, with the bad person or the antagonist being the witch. So they go up, and then Gretel tells Hansel that she's going to stay here and try to right the wrongs or try to purify herself, because now she knows that she can either be a good witch, a white witch, or an evil witch. So she gives Hansel a map, or tells him where to go exactly, to go to the woodsman, where he can go learn the ways of the axe, grow up and become a man, while she's going to stay here and try to right the wrongs of this witch. So Hansel walks off, and then Gretel's kind of looking around, and she sees all the little children that she saw earlier in the film in the mirrors. She sees them running off into the woods because they are free, and now their spirits can leave. Like I said, this film it's unneeded. It was one of those ones where Hansel and Gretel's in the public domain, so you don't got to pay anybody to make it. You can just use the bones of the story and kind of build your own thing off of it. They did it a couple of years ago with a film that Jeremy Renner was in, and that film was kind of not very good. This one as well is not very good. It has some pretty cool shots in it in terms of the cinematography, the way the camera moves and rises and goes up between this like cement basement. But outside of that, it's just really kind of pointless. It drags along, doesn't give you any high points, doesn't really explain the fact that this lady is related to the little girl that just kind of pops up, and it's supposed to be like some big reveal, but it's not. It's just kind of like, okay, I see what you did there. It's not very good. But outside of that, I mean, would I recommend this film? No, I wouldn't. It's not very good. In fact, I think the bulk of the Hansel and Gretel or Gretel and Hansel films are not very good. And outside of that, like I said, I wouldn't recommend this. Find something else to watch. It's not really a horror movie. It's one of those ones that's kind of a little bit psychological in terms of how they try to tell it. It's not really scary. There's not really any jump scares or anything like that. But it's just not worth seeing. Other than that, thank you. Feel free to like, subscribe, and share, and have a good day.